Welcome to Sponsored by Nobody. This week, sponsored by Labels. Who reads those anyway? It is December 2020, and you are listening to Leaves in the Jungle, Season 1,
Episode 5.
Interlude 1. In this game, we will be using the Wildsea world setting and system. In this interlude, we will be discussing character backstories.
Hi, I'm Bev, and I am playing Rook. Baruka, or Rook, as it is much easier for her shipmates to pronounce, grew up in high branches and higher society. Her people do not think themselves superior, they just like things done well and orderly. Her parents were engineers who maintained infrastructure in their city, and one day when Rook was a child, her mother found herself staring into Rook's imploring eyes, holding a pathetic looking bundle of dirty, damp fur, begging, I found him in the garage looking for scraps. Can I please, please, please keep him? The bundle was a puppy who sort of looks like if a Leonberger's evolved into monkeys to survive, and from that moment, Scraps and Rook were looking out for each other. Now the pair are bigger, Scraps much more so, and Rook has gotten them into working on ships, holding them together. Machines make sense to her. Everything has a place and a function. They can be understood. If they break, it's just a matter of sorting out where everything belongs. Her biggest challenge with her current crew? She likes hugs, but this may prove difficult. I mean, Gomez is quite pointy, and Zitzi, problem hugging? There's no problem, especially not interacting with Crowley, squirmy, scary. Not scary! Finding them scary would be so rude.
Yeah, when you say your people are from a high society, or they like things just so and orderly, but they don't think of themselves superior. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, for starters, she is a shankling, so literally high branches, high treetops, for starters. But I just kind of envision like a people who, I mean, like maybe if somebody who didn't know them or understand them, kind of came to visit there, they might consider everyone in this in this shank to be snobs, but it's not that anybody in the shank looks down on anybody in some kind of prejudicial kind of way. They're just a very like ritualistic, everything has a order and a process, and there is a correct way. I mean, like, you probably met these people, like there's some people who are just cool to do a job whatever way they want to, and then there are people who are like, no, there is a right way and a wrong way, and we must do it the right way because that is the best way. So it's, yeah, they're just kind of like, things have a time of day, food is prepared in a certain order of events. The idea of improv and spontaneity is, I mean, like, again, it's not looked down on, it's just not something that the society comes to naturally.
That's fair. Yeah. And what about, you said your parents were working on infrastructure in the city. They're engineers that maintain it. What type of infrastructure do they work on?
I was kind of like just toying around with this. I kind of had the vague notion that like maybe her mother is like what a Shank's equivalent to a city planner would be. And then kind of met her dad because her dad is more of a I don't know, I was trying to pick like one of like the basic like either like irrigation or plumbing or electrical or something like that. I don't know. I strangely kind of want to go with like he actually does the building part of cities plumbing systems, and so they kind of met together on the job.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
neat. So he runs pipes for the plumbing system.
Well, I don't know if he runs it, but like certainly it is his career is to be, you know, the making sure everything flows downward.
Yeah, sorry. By runs pipe, I mean
Yeah, yeah,
lays pipe, puts the pipe down, not runs the operation of piping.
yeah.
Yeah. And then you're talking about how you got into working on ships. How'd you get into working on ships?
Oh, that's actually something that I haven't really thought about yet. So far, kind of the first inkling of an idea there is just I decided to make Rook just somebody who is almost reliant on things just making sense, or like unknowns and vagueness are uncomfortable for her. So mechanics just seemed to make sense. And that's
Yeah.
kind of why she got into that field. And I feel like as far as the wanting, like translating that specifically into like working on ships as opposed to like something more stable, like staying in a tree somewhere, I kind of wondered if maybe like she is somewhat aware that this is a character flaw to be uncomfortable with the unknown. So there was almost a part of her that's just like, I'm going to intentionally work on a ship because life there is crazy, and because the Wildsea is wild. So yeah, I
Yeah.
there's not really a specific story there that I've created yet, but it just kind of it's more of a character instincts motivation kind of a thing.
Fair enough. And then this wasn't talked about in your little description here, but knowing you and knowing your character sheet, you have the Meyer ancestors whisper their disappointment, and you also have ghost sight as an aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does this manifest when the ancestors talk about how disappointed they are, and how do you feel about the ability to see ghosts?
Well, the ghost ones, I kind of decided that it was just something that throws her for a loop, and she kind of hates that. Like she'll just kind of get like, she'll hear from ghosts or visions, and it just makes her like it's not something that can be measured or something that can be understood on a mechanical level. So she almost kind of like would prefer to ignore that part of her. And the ancestors whisper disappointment. I'm not sure. Maybe.
I think, if I may butt
Yeah.
in a little bit here,
Yeah.
because we talked about this before when you picked that as your Meyer.
Mhm.
I think we discussed how your ancestors were like big, beefy, like muscular people,
Okay.
and they're disappointed in how like hoity-toity you and your society have become.
Hmm.
If I remember that discussion correctly.
I don't know if I remember that, but I do like it.
Yeah, so like even though you're quote unquote what is it? A gear rabbit. Uh your ancestors were all like hunters and like huge jock type characters, for lack of better words.
Mhm.
So they look down on you because you're working on machines and you're like
Nerd!
scrawny. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh no, they're just bullying me.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Usually these stories have to do with like, insecurity about what former generations. No, this is just straight up bullying.
Yeah.
Oh no, the voices in my head are jerks.
Yeah, I just picture like your ancestors being these like huge, like muscle bound, like men and women,
Mhm.
and they're just like, "Oh, look at you trying to lift that wrench! Oh, I bet you think you're so strong."
Yeah, let's do it. I like that.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, can't tighten a single bolt. I once punched a leviathan."
I'm just sitting there like mumbling to myself, I've evolved my mind. Shut up.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, "My brain is strong," and they're like, "Oh, my brain is strong. Oh, look at me.
Yeah.
Look at me. I can do math."
I'm literate.
Yeah. Oh, I read books. Like, yeah, that's how I picture they like whisper disappointment at you, and you're just like, they're wrong, but also they're your ancestors and
So
they're ghosts.
yeah,
And
yeah. There's like a part of you that like like you because well like getting into the real life zone. Like my great grandmother raised something like 16 kids during the Depression, and when you hear about like all the stuff that she did, and like my grandma talking about how like being one of the younger ones, she never actually realized how poor they were because like my great grandma was just an all-star of taking care of the family, and I'm sitting here like I know
yeah.
how to refresh the page to figure out if that's why it's bugged out. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, times change and things are different, right?
Right? I mean, like, like, I hear stories about how, like, well, when one of the older boys grew out of his good pants, then all the younger boys got new Sunday vests. And I'm like, I'm super impressed with myself that I can sew pajama pants out of flannel that are kind of awkward, but who cares because they're pajama pants. So yeah, if we can just like translate that, like even though there's like, her being all like, I have reason to be proud of myself, but also I'm so useless. I hide behind my puppy.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's Myers that like build your character story really are it's good. I like that.
Nice.
Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good little cap of your character.
Cute.
So you were Bev playing Rook the Ardent?
I was and continue to be.
Nice.
Mm.
And I was Ian the Firefly.
Hi there, I'm Jonathan. I play Gomez the Ectus, and this is a little bit about his past. So Gomez has always had a fascination with the old world and the treasures that the trees bring up with them. As they grow, they lift whatever is on the ground up and up and up until maybe it peeks through and people can actually find it and get the stuff. His home was secluded on what's called a spit, which is when the green sea lifts actual Earth up with it and creates probably a temporary place where people could live on actual dirt or an actual rock and stuff. And it's still stable as far as he knows. And the sacred sands that gave him life are, kept there. So it's like an Ectus breeding ground almost. They're cactus people, so they go somewhere to pollinate. And the sand there is kept warm with lamps and that are basically recycled bulbs. Like despite the hostility of the sea around his home, his life was pretty peaceful. No real dark backstory or anything other than the common things that people just have to deal with in this setting. He could have stayed home, been happy, but after his second season of pollinating and stuff, he got restless, and when a crew came along, he joined them and took to the seas. Uh, Precious things are kind of everywhere. Things that can be reinvented and really bring prosperity to whoever owns them and understands them, and he does. He knows how things work and how to fix them. So that's just kind of been his thing. He's still pretty young though.
Nice.
And that's Gomez.
Awesome. Yeah, no, actually when you said they have warming lights like old recycled light bulbs on the sands, all I'm picturing is the those giant light bulbs from Trigun.
Okay. Oh man, like aren't those the plants?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
the plants where those giant light bulb looking things that like glow, and they call them the plants or whatever. I don't know if you want it that way, but
No, I'll always take from Trigun. Trigun's a great show.
yeah, no, I'm just like, yeah, with the sands and the like old things coming up, I'm just totally picturing this spit looking like a little like plant right out of Trigun almost.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. That's really cool. You said your like odd treasures coming up from the sea always give you a fascination. And I mean, obviously, we can see that with your character being so good at scavenging and repairing and doing weird and sorts of stuff. Um, what kind of was there any one treasure maybe that really sparked Gomez's excitement when he was younger?
Hmm. Maybe an old train set.
Ooh,
Like it was incomplete, but it had a couple of the cars, maybe a caboose. Might have been missing its engine, but you can piece together probably like he might know what a an engine was just from stories or books or whatnot, but it had the little tracks you could put down and stuff, and it's just kind of interesting and almost alien to think that that kind of thing could be used to travel long distances when like the world around you is always shifting. Like you don't have stable ground to lay down tracks.
yeah, I love that. That's like the idea of trains in this setting would be so foreign to people. So yeah, kids would definitely gravitate to like some crazy cool train set thing. much like kids in our world gravitate to like crazy spaceships and stuff.
Yeah, I think I might make it canon that in his room he actually has the little caboose still.
Ooh, nice.
It's just on
Yeah,
a shelf somewhere. He doesn't talk about it because it's just a thing, like it's just a memento. But it's there,
that's cool.
like Picard's ships.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm drawing a direct connection to Gomez and Picard. He's not the Picard of this group.
Oh,
Not because he doesn't want peace. He's just not good at talking to people.
yeah.
And,
That's
and I,
that's okay.
and I do attribute that to like the fact that his home was secluded. Like you would get people showing up with cool stuff, and they also had cool stuff to trade to those people, but you didn't have a large population. It might have been maybe a few hundred people, and that was it.
Well, yeah, I think we've seen a few times in game where your character is almost, for lack of better words, a little awkward around large groups or people where he doesn't quite know what to say or what to do. And yeah, you can, as you're saying, you can attribute that to his growing up in such a small community.
Yeah, he'll just be like, "Oh, I'm very happy for you all having this having this community of yours," and I'm sure it almost comes off as like patronizing. People are like, "Oh yeah, he's making fun of our community," when he's really like, "No, this is a good thing that you have a community. I'm actually very happy for you." It's kind of like
Yeah.
when somebody says "good for you," but they actually mean it.
Yeah. He doesn't realize the colloquialism he's using is almost wrong
Yeah,
because he's like, "Oh, that means it's a good thing." Yeah, good. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah. Good for you guys. And they're all like, "Wow, who's this guy?"
Yeah, and then he's saying like, so what was his biggest leaving his home? What was his biggest thing that he had to kind of overcome?
Hmm. He was used to small groups of people, but he was used to the same small groups of people. So I think his crew had to get used to him, and like vice versa. Like they were new people that he would meet people, like the people who would come to trade, but they'd talk for a little while and then they leave. Whereas this crew, he's like living with them, so they kind of had to get used to his colloquialisms and the way that he talks or the way that he sees the world. And like when he talks about their homes, they had to be like, "Oh wait, he's actually meaning that this is a good thing."
Okay. And then what would you say his, I mean, obviously as a scavenger, he's always looking for something exciting and unique out there. But
Hmm.
what would you say his, like, what does he want to find? You mentioned trains earlier. Does he want to find like a legitimate old work, like semi-working train and like repurpose it on the sea or something? Or what does he want to do?
He wants to put a thorium reactor together.
Ooh.
He's like not equipped to do it, but he's read about them. Like they were things that existed and a relatively safe source of almost unlimited energy. I mean, there's almost no way that they would get enough water to actually run that reaction because it's all about heat and water, and there's not a lot of standing sources of water. But you know, if he could put something like that together and then put together a team to somehow go down to the depths and put together a reactor and then somehow run that energy back up to topside, or even just like at that point you could have a permanent facility that doesn't need the sun because you have energy being produced that doesn't require like sunlight to grow or anything. And he's already familiar with the plant at his home. Like he could try to recreate that and use the reactor to power it, or vice versa. I mean, obviously not vice versa because you don't need to power the generator.
Yeah,
But well, I guess you do. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
The
Yeah.
generator produces energy. You don't use energy to power the generator. So like that's just a thing. Like something similar to that would be like a lifetime goal. Like that's his like golden bucket list that he will probably die not having achieved. and he'd be okay with that because he's like, no, I would have to find an awful lot of very specific things in order to make this possible.
Yeah, but I mean, like, expanding on that, you could get close to it. Like, it's basically, it sounds like, while it would be cool to make a full-on reactor, he just kind of wants to build another plant almost. It sounds like another place where it has like a renewable energy source.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. So is he trying to build like? Is he just trying to build it because he wants to build it, or is he trying to build it to make a home for people, or what?
I think he's definitely trying to build it to make a new home for people. One of the things that the plant almost like produces as just like as waste essentially is it just like grinds stuff into sand, and then that sand can be used as like a new bed for new Ectus to be born. And so he is looking to eventually make a new permanent home for Ectus, like not like all Ectus or whatever, but like a new colony basically. And like at that point, he might retire from sailing because he doesn't want to sail forever. He doesn't want to die doing this. He doesn't want to retire doing this. Are you kidding me? this, this life is a nightmare, but he enjoys it though.
Yeah,
It would just be a nightmare to imagine continuing to do it for years and years and years. Eventually he'll get tired and want to settle down somewhere. So I think he's also looking for that. Where to settle, if not going back home.
yeah, building his own place, like marking out a new settlement, a new area, putting his mark on the world sort of thing, but not in a huge way. In a, like, I've made a home for myself here and my friends and other people if they want to come.
Long after I'm dead, somebody will carve a statue in my likeness. It might not it might not actually look like me, but I accept it.
Excellent. And I think we'll end it there. I was Ian as the Firefly.
And I'm Jonathan as Gomez.
Hi, I'm Dylan, and I'm playing Jisan the Gao. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what my character looks like and his backstory as well. So he's about 4.5 feet tall, with flesh that alters tone based on mood, climate, and intent. He's spry despite his mechanical leg, bounding around the kitchen. His head has dark blue or purple mottling surrounding the middle, but no sensory organs are present. A frill with long, stalk strands of mycelium ending in tiny electric blue caps protrudes from the top rear of his head. He is always survived by his quick thinking and speech, trusting his gut over his head, and having a reputation for never being willing to walk away without feeling like he has the better side of the deal. Growing up as a rootless youth who was raised in a traveling circus, Jisan has learned to distrust outsiders, a trait accented by his general nervousness, and hoard resources to the point of fault. Fluctuating between mercenarily pragmatic and single-minded obsession, he relentlessly pursues the height of flavor, venturing boldly into territory that would terrify and honestly disgust lesser chefs. Jisan's pursuits are unrecognized in general as being a foolish dream by most of those he meets. His quest for a so-called perfect spice, at least until they taste his cooking. A well-guarded secret by those he knows, even the lowliest of scraps can be transformed into a soul-nourishing meal within his care. Outside of his passion, Jisan comes off as varying degrees between curt and downright unsympathetic, concerned more with saving his own spongy bits than championing for others, though he is pragmatic above all else and he can see the value in those he trusts. Due to his developmental years taking the shape that they did, he will sometimes extend trust openly despite his own anxiety and occasional self-sabotage in the cases of those who share his fate, either by being Gao or other rootless.
Nice. You mentioned he has a mechanical leg. How did that happen?
I would imagine it was probably just bitten clean off by some form of beast. I haven't really decided exactly what, but...
That's fair. Nice. Okay. Yeah, some kind of just like... was he really young, or was he middle, like, was it super early on in his life that it was bitten off, or later in life?
Yeah, it's definitely something where he's had to have it like refitted probably once or twice as he's grown physically larger.
Okay, that's cool. And then you also mentioned he has the ending in tiny electric blue caps on his like strands of mycelium. Is that where he gets his like toxin, or not toxin? He has hallucinogenic spores, or do they come from other parts?
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly it. They kind of like rattle out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you can think of there's uh I'm trying to think of it. It's like those weird red mushrooms that have the frill around them and the really long stalks. It's kind of like one of
Oh yeah,
those. You know what I mean? They're really gross looking.
yeah. But they're awesome. Like mushrooms just look
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah.
They're such weird, unique shapes. So he was in a traveling circus. Is that circus still around?
No, I imagine that after a certain amount of like unavoidable deaths and like nothing really ever lasts for too long. They suffered critical damage to their ship, and there's just too many monsters once you start hitting the outer layers of the Wildsea. So it's something that would have probably existed for the the better part of a decade or so during his developmental years, and then
Okay.
completely fallen apart and left him working on boats to sustain himself.
Hmm. And then with this circus, uh, are there still people from the circus around? Like, does he ever keep in touch occasionally, or are they all just kind of they went their own ways and that's life? You don't always know the people you worked with.
Somewhere between the first and the second, for sure, because it's like I wouldn't say that they had a chance to stay in contact. So he might encounter one of the people that he had worked with, but whether or not they'll be happy to see him is entirely beyond the point, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't say that they were close. Maybe he had someone that he was close with, but the chances of them having died when the ship went up, right? So
Yeah. And then was this circus like was the ship the circus and it would just travel area to area, or like and people would come on the ship and they do their show on the ship, or did the ship have all the stuff and then they'd set up when they got to an area on like land or whatever?
the latter, though they could definitely perform like the ship itself would have had like a stage mode where they can
It would just be
unfurl itself.
smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then was the ship, was it like Cirque du Soleil where it's only like humanoids, or was it a whole bunch of like a menagerie of animals as well? And were they like super dangerous animals or just kind of weird, unique animals?
Well, one has to imagine that the weird things that you could find on the Wildsea being incorporated into a like a menagerie, as you say, would be pretty exotic. I like to think if it's one ship, it would probably have had to have been pretty big or a very small beast exhibit, if that was indeed the case. But yeah, I'm imagining probably at least like acrobats, and actually that's interesting. Is it actually a poaching ship?
Yeah. Yeah. Was it all a front?
Oh man.
Delving deeper in the character backstories.
But I didn't see it. I was too young. I didn't
Yeah,
realize back
exactly.
then. Oh man,
Ooh.
you're shaking me to my core, Ian.
That's good. That's what these little backstories are for.
Oh man.
Okay, so yeah, was it secretly a poaching ship? I mean, you're commanding lore here about your character, so.
Now I need to find out.
Okay, so maybe you don't know. We'll figure that out later. Okay, maybe that'll come up in game one time.
Nice.
Okay, that's cool. Oh, I'm excited. Yeah, that's why we do these little backstories, is because then we can pull different backstory ideas and new thoughts. Um, you're pursuing the so-called perfect spice. Would this perfect spice be in a place known as Flavortown, or
Well, okay. Well, see, there was a legendary spice back from before the apocalypse called allspice, and I feel that he's misinterpreted the
naming
all.
convent
Yeah,
nomenclature? That's the word.
yes, exactly. He believes that allspice is a singular spice and not a blend. So he's out there questing for what he perceives to be the root of allspice. But
Apparently allspice is actually a root. It's a singular root. It's a weird nomenclature, but allspice, I believe, is a single spice.
Well,
But yes, I get what you're saying. Sorry to just blow your mind there.
man, I just don't know how many times that can happen in short order in this conversation. Regardless, yeah, he's questing for what he believes to be the penultimate spice by which he can, like, it's almost more an excuse. By giving himself an impossible goal, he enables himself to travel about the Wildsea and discover new ingredients and like get his grubby little mushroom hands on the ability to make food that's like wild and other people haven't had the ability to make yet. Like eventually all things will become mastery of his domain through the art of cooking.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. So you're mastering cooking. Has he done any, for lack of better words, like internships with other chefs around the sea, or has he always just been a lone wolf kind of cooking?
He learned his original love of cooking. He learned from like his, one would assume, father figure on the ship.
Yeah.
And like between working as, one would assume, one of these beast handlers, which is sort of like a throwaway job, and then having like this connected sort of atmosphere in the kitchen serving food, and that's where his personal connection, like, and his humanity is contained there, like, despite being a mushroom, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I assume that he's had other teachers as well by going out in the world, but he's more the type who would like go around and challenge people through cooking, and then,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Like a shokugeki?
Yes, basically.
Yes. So he just goes around and does like shokugeki food wars with people instead of like actually being like, "Hey, can I apprentice under you?" He just challenges them straight up, be like, "Duel me."
Except that, like, obviously earlier on in his career he got his ass whooped a lot, right? And then did have to apprentice under people and learn a thing. But he was
nice.
he's also mostly the type where he'd be like, I'm going to steal your secrets and then run away, like,
Nice.
as much as possible. And they'd be like, you totally didn't understand it all. And he's like, haha, I learned one thing, time to take off to go battle my next dude, right?
Amazing. I picture him like, I learned how to stir from you, and it's like that. I know so many more skills. No, I learned one skill. I can leave now.
The time for me to go lose to the next dude for the next like 10 years.
I'm hearing from our peanut gallery here that allspice is made from dried berries and a plant. So it's a singular thing. Also, there's a secondary allspice that is a spice blend. So incredible. The more you know. Our listeners didn't believe that we were an educational channel, but yeah. So do you think, I mean, this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you think with the way Jisun's personality is this current crew a permanent home? Does he see it? Or is this just another stopping point on his way to victory?
He's definitely made some deeper bonds here. Like, he's avoided death a number of times, but he's got some good trust. Like, between Rook, who he's maybe not the most fond of, but it's almost like this type of petty squabbles that you get among family. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
And Tsitsi is literally his best friend in the world, at least as far as like reasonable people are very hard to find.
That's fair.
Finding someone that you can actually like trust, especially because his trust is not given easily. So the fact that he's found, like, and he's not a fighter either, so having the somewhat scary spider guy on his side is also like an important tactic for survival, because again, he's pragmatic above all other things, and like,
Yeah.
he's like, yes, here's the very deadly thing that's not aimed at me, I'm going to stay as close as possible. So long as the crew and the ship stays in its current configuration, I can't see why he'll leave. It would take an amazingly better deal to pull him out of that willingly.
Fair enough. And I think we'll end it there. I was Ian as the Firefly.
I'm Dylan as myself, as Jisan.
Hi, I'm Austin, and I'm playing Yaku the Zealocray. And here is what I've kind of come up so far with for a backstory. It's kind of been customized and organically grown since the first episode. The amalgam, known to their crewmates as Yaku, was hatched as a multitude in a small nest deep in the Tangle. The travelers of the brood, returned from the surface with a shape similar to ones they claimed lived above them, told the newlings of a blinding world filled with sustenance and fear. There was a portion that reacted with a new feeling, not one of fear or caution, but of curiosity and wonder of this bright new world. So, as they slowly found others who had the same mindset among the multitudes in their brood, they generated a link and began to absorb each new experience brought back by the travelers together. And after many recallings of every memory and tale brought back by the travelers, they only became obsessed with a craving for wanting more. And they set out, once they were large enough to what they thought could protect themselves, to find the world above, the blinding one that was waiting. On Zetsuyaku's ascent through the layers, he came close to death with something that the travelers had been rumoring hanging around the hive before they left, but he'd never actually gotten a close look at it until there was a savage explosion of leaves and spray of sesarine and just claws and teeth in his face. He was rescued by Drock Shaltree, who came upon him hearing a crash in the sea. Drock, realizing this was not just some small creature, being attacked by some other predator, sacrificed a bit of himself and ended up saving the small thing, and upon realizing its intelligence and ability to communicate, taught it the ways of the Shanklings and the Wildsea and how sailors are meant to be protected and saved. But in this, Zetsuyaku became accustomed to the dangers of the one-minded as they became to know all the single-minded races on the seas. He gained the knowledge that people are fearful and afraid of his race, and most of them approach him with caution and sometimes even violence. Therefore, after Drock taught him all he could and separated, he never really joined up with a crew until his current one, being known as the Solo Walker, known to sneak out and save ships as a little shadow on the seas by himself. It wasn't until he met his new crew that he finally got to acclimatize and become friends and realize that he should reach out more. And he changed his appearance to do so. Before, he was just like this large shambling mass of armor plates and webs and leaves and sticks, but upon gathering with the new crew and seeing all the sailors and stuff with their brightly colored flags and kerchiefs communicating with each other, he realized that, well, anyone can understand that. Everyone likes a brightly colored thing. Ignoring the aspect of the venomous things that live on the seas. He's a little bit virgin to those. Therefore, he covered his armor plates with little tassels, a pendant here, a banner there, a vast assortment of different flags arrayed across his arms and his chest so he could get at them at quick access. It's not the greatest for stealth, but he's not going for stealth. He's going for outreach. Currently, his last dilemma is learning how to be a better person, he thinks, and this hugging thing that his crewmates seem to keep forcing upon him. Plus, long conversations are really hard when it's just about trees. And that is Zetsuyaku so far.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Were there any others who also became a hive mind from your brood? Or were you the only one?
Well, as mentioned before, there was the travelers, but there was also another small one who was a bit more, who took the opposite approach when they got exposed to the new travelers' stories, and they just grew fearful and dark and kept hiding away. They were known as, let's see, what do we got here? They were known as Jazaro. Jaziro.
Okay. And what is your opinion on the Chelicrae or Zelicrae that use the skins of other creatures as their form instead of just like cloth and armor?
I can see the relevance behind it, but the implication of taking another intelligent being's form without their like consent or permission is one of the aspects of my race. I can see why people fear, and I try to avoid it.
Okay. And then how do you look on other Chelicrae that you find though? Because I mean, if you can see the value in winning the lottery of skin, as it's called, but if you find one who has won the lottery of skin or one who hasn't, how do you treat either of them differently? How do you treat other Chelicrae you find?
Generally with an aura of like acceptance that they wouldn't get from any of the other one-minded, because my goal is to create like a place where all the quote unquote monstrous races can like coexist with the one-mindeds without fear. So when I encounter, because like I said, I understand it makes it easier to associate with all the ones that would attack us. I've been attacked many times because I don't have the lottery of skin, because I just look like some shambling beast.
Yeah.
So I accept them all, but I also pay attention to where they got it from, because I understand not all creatures are willing when a Chelicrae wins the lottery.
Yes, that is a good point to bring up, because Chelicrae, some will take the skin of others and some will be given the skin of others. So it's definitely an interesting point of how you get the skin. Growing up with Drock, what was Drock like? What were some of the things he taught you specifically?
Drock taught me basic creation techniques, some of them handed down from among his people. He claimed from before the pre-verdancy times, like basket weaving, reed whistles, leaf whistles, basic ropes, stuff like that. Taught me to navigate by the stars, which are the only thing that don't change on the sea.
Mm-hmm.
He was for someone who didn't travel with a set crew a lot of the time, he was someone who he was a beacon on the sea, whether it was him being loud or bright or accepting. Like, you couldn't really, if Drock was on the sea, you knew he was around.
Okay, that's exciting. And then you have your Swarm Scout and your Sentinel Skywing. Do you want to talk about those for a minute?
Sure. So the Swarm Scout is kind of the result of me being alone for so long. One, with the long climb up from the Tangle being so deep down, and then being on my alone again so long after being with Drock. A portion of my spiders kind of like separated off and became their own little pet entity that I could communicate with in a way that wasn't just with a singular hive mind. Something to stimulate me beyond just the colony.
Okay.
And then the bird, I had assumed it was food on my way up, but judging by the thrashing and it just standing out on a branch looking all stupid. But then I realized that there were a few of them, and after observing them for a while and watching other predators eat its compatriots, and it proceed to not freak out or fly away, I decided to capture it and study it.
Okay. And that's the one that is overgrown with some type of moss or fungus?
Yeah, it's similar to a red kite, because obviously the creatures then aren't the same as the creatures now.
Yeah.
But with like camouflage modeled feathers to blend into the sea, as well as and then out of its orifices, you can start seeing like little tendrils of fungus growing out of it. So like out of its eye ducts, little nostrils in its beak is just like forced open by a tendril.
Terrifying. And then you have the mire. Something is hunting you. You're sure of it. Do you know what's hunting you? Do you not know what's hunting you? And you're sure of it, but are you actually being hunted, or is it just all in your mind?
I'm actually being hunted. So there was some type of predator that had started before I left my original brood that had started hunting around it, and it wasn't a very large brood to begin with. And it was quite violent, and a lot of the brood got eaten or destroyed. And when I was escaping, when Drock rescued me, I wasn't the fully sized form I am now, I wasn't small enough to make the predator look any less intimidating and large enough to be a threat to Drock.
Oh, okay.
And all he could glimpse was like long things and something like sinewy and this weird clicking noise.
Ooh, very intriguing. Very intriguing. Okay, I think that's good. So you were Austin playing Zitsi Yaku, the Chelicray?
I was, and I hopefully will be.
Nice. And I'm still Ian the Firefly.